coming. When Richard told me that he was bringing a book out, I thought this would be a brilliant opportunity to meet him, if you've not met him before, for you to hear some of the pieces from his book. I wanted to read the little bit of blurb. I was honoured when he asked me if I would send something in about the way he performs and the book to go on the back. And I was meant to be going to the studio to do this, where the book is, and I'm not, so I don't even have it in front of me. So the idea was, if you've got the book, you can read along with him, and I don't even have a copy of the book to be able to do that. So apologies, Richard. But you know, it's a really unusual friendship in that if you saw us both sat at a bus stop, you wouldn't expect us to have that much in common. But we just clicked the first time we met, and I just think he's an amazing human being. So yeah, I just when like I say, when he told me about the book, I was like, we need to do something where we can just tell people about it, because part of his charm is the stories he tells, is the tone of his voice. It's just everything about him. And when you buy a book, you don't get an opportunity to see and hear that. So hopefully when you hear a couple of his poems today, and then when you buy his book, you'll be able to read the rest of them in his voice, which is the plan. So if you don't have a book already, there'll be a point tonight where we give you a link and you can order the book from there. So I will hand you over to the man himself, Mr. Richard. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm very honoured that this has been put on by you and Rose, and I'm very honoured that I've got a book out. I'm 69 in a few weeks, and I don't know of many older poets who get their first publication. Many who are published at this age have been published for many years. And I have persistency and persuasion skills, but also I do believe Rose likes my poems. So I don't think I would have talked her into that if she didn't. And I'm just going to do a couple of gentle little ones to start with. I write about all sorts of things. I write serious, angry, complaining, ranting, political, kids' stories, anything that moves me. I mean, somebody once asked me to write a poem about Tai Chi. Well, I don't know anything about Tai Chi, and I don't want to know anything about Tai Chi. So I said to him, why don't you write one? He said, well, I'm not a poet. I said, well, you aren't until you try. Anyway, so it has to move me. It can be anger, irritation, happiness, joy, whatever. And if I'm moved, I can write. And most of you, that if you do know me, I've known that I've made a real great effort to lose weight, and I've lost 6 stone. And that's the background to this poem. It's called It Happened. When? It got here. When? And how? A young, pretty, blonde girl seated on a bus. She smiled at me. I was flattered and pleased. She stood up, gave up her seat to the old guy. Me. It's happened. How? When? Why? And then it happened again and again and again. Thank you. Then this is quite, it's an old story. It's about when Eileen and I were engaged. And it's 2 little poems that join together. Rock climb. A friend took me to Derbyshire to climb a vast, tall rock feature called a chimney. Near the top, I paused. I thought, why am I here? How can I be scared and bored at the same time? Never climb such a structure again. Safe and sound. Returned from dangerous rock climbing before mobiles invented. Went to fiance's house to reassure her I am okay. Her sister answers the door. I can tell something's up. Eileen sat in the lounge, looking abashed, arm in plaster. Fell on the way to work, tripped over a paving stone, one that was sticking up. Hospital job, broke finger, but I'm okay. And there we go. On a slightly more serious note, and I like my serious poems, and a lot of people seem to have a YouTube channel, which is a big internet presence. And this is, apart from the birthday poem, which I send to everyone monotonously every morning, well, not to everyone, but to each one who has a birthday. Apart from that, this is by far the most watched poem, and it's a true story. And I worked for about 7 years at an advice centre, a little one, an independent one in Leeds. And I also volunteered at the CAB. And when I decided to write this, I had about 80 cases I could have done, and it would just be boring having too many on the same subject. But this is Benefit Scrounger, and all I've done is change the names. Esme was a cleaner, a grafter, not well paid. Became ill, could not breathe easily. Went to a doctor, treatment did not help. Referred her to the chest clinic, all this time on sick leave. Lots of tests on vastly expensive machines. Diagnosed by a specialist, a great man in his field. Chronic obstructive airways disease. I went to see her, applied for DLA. I was warned to wait at the door. Took Esme 10 minutes to get there. Holding onto the wall, slowly, gasping, moving. Back to her chair, oxygen by her side. She used it all the time if she went out, which was rare. Her husband carried the cylinder, too heavy for her. DLA form submitted. Doctor from the benefits agency attended to assess to her face. He called her a benefit scrounger. DLA refused. Statements from husband and GP ignored, submitted review, with more statements, including the specialists, all supporting Esme. Within my letter gave notice of appeal, stated that if the review failed, I would ambulance Esme to a tribunal on camera and if possible on TV. Review allowed, payment backdated. That was not important. Esme wanted to be believed. Esme delighted. I complained about the doctor formally. To be retrained, they said, not sacked. No apology. 10 months later, Esme, that woman who could not breathe, that benefit scrounger, died. The doctor, no doubt still earning his money on top of a GP wedge for a bit of overtime. Now, who would you call a benefit scrounger? And, every time I perform that, I do have people saying, oh, that's how I felt, that's how I was treated. And this was, 8 years ago or longer. And it's got worse, and it gets worse every year and every decade. So even though it's an old story, I think it's completely relevant, and, I can tell the story still. Now we've got a little pair of funny poems. They're not in the book. You never know. I might talk Rose into a second book. Where is she? I want to look at her face. In a year's time, dear. I don't mean next week. These are two that we went just before lockdown. We went to see Petula Clark. Have I ever mentioned her? In Mary Poppins. She was the bird lady singing Feed the Birds. And on that little trip, which was one of these tour bus things, two little things happened that I wanted to write about. And this is damp, misery, and glamour. In the glamour and the rush of the West End theatre crowd, socialising and happy, £85 tickets, money well spent. A glittering shop, the show ablaze with light. Bejewelled basques and teddies, tutus, resplendent with net and glitter. Such extravagances and lavishness. 300, 400, and even £500. In the well-lit doorway, in front of those displays, a young, homeless lad with a thin, damp blanket shivering away. And it was just such a contrast. It was a kid. He was 17 or something, and it was there were 400 and 500 bits of tat in the window, and it just symbolised to me everything that's wrong with society. Now, it's a minorly rude one, minorly. but Graham, the kids can still listen to it, I'm sure. Bracelets and buttocks. This was on the way back home. Odd the glimpses of life you see, of passing strangers, on a coach trip behind two women. One holds a phone with a bright lit screen. Attracts my attention in the dark, scrolls down a lot. Looks at gold jewellery. 40% off, clicking a lot to buy. Then between the bracelets, buttocks, naked buttocks, male buttocks, a lot. Didn't really get to know her, but when I think of that trip, I think of her and bracelets and buttocks a lot. It's so bizarre. And she must have spent a fortune on all this stuff that she was clicking on. Now, please, if you've got any questions, do put them on chat, and then I can get to them and talk to you about them. If you've got anything you want to know about why I write or how I write or what the process is or why I write about a particular thing or a particular poem.
I was just going to bring this up actually, Richard, and just say if anyone wants to actually speak, if you just send me a little message or if you just wave at your camera or something so we can get you unmuted and ask a question. But I wanted to ask, did you write any of your poems specifically for the book? And if you did, how different is it writing, knowing it's going to be, people are going to read it out of a book rather than hear you perform it?
Well, no, I didn't write anything special, especially for the book, because Rose and I have been in discussion for about 5 years, I think. And I have quite a reservoir of poems, and I deliberately went from my earliest poems. We have some from the first 6 months, and one called "Oh What Joy" was a recent one, but not particularly for the book. So I tried to select it, and also I tried to put some small comedy, some big comedy. I was worried about the comedy because I do a lot of this and gurning, and my voice, you know, and that's the point Phil made in his notes. So there's only a minimum of comedy in the book, but now that people have told me it does work written down, then in book 2, which I mentioned the possibility of book 2, there will be probably more comedy. But then I also put in very serious ones like Benefit Scrounger, and I put sentimental ones. There's one about my uncle John, who Rosemary obviously remembers very dearly, and Graham remembers him too. So I try to put all aspects of my writing in. I put one historical one. I write a lot of historical poems, but they're really for the internet. I don't perform them very often. And so I try to select and show what I do, really. The only thing I have missed out is children's stories. And if I did happen to have compiled book 2 already, I could tell you there probably is one in it. But there you go.
I see a question from Mark Simmons, and if you want to unmute yourself, Marky, you can ask.
Yeah, Richard, it's lovely to be here with you. I've seen you perform a couple of times on Zoom, which has been our lifeline over the last year or so. But what I'd like to ask is 2 very short ones. One, at what age did you actually start writing poetry? And 2, you perform often very short poems, and that's actually quite unusual for somebody who, when they're performing. And do you get any feedback about that? Do people? I mean, obviously people must like that format. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, to put it very briefly, I in the chat beforehand, I did answer question 1 more or less, so I don't want to bore people. But I have always written professionally. You know, I had to write reports and things like that, so language was always usual to me. And about 10 years ago, I was asked by people at work to translate Wordsworth Daffodils, I wandered lonely as a cloud, into a piece of satirical doggerel because I thought I could, and I did, and they loved it. And I got so much feedback. And I thought, oh, wow. And then my boss, who was a lady, went to Paris, and she told us in great detail about going up the Eiffel Tower and him getting down on one knee, and they got engaged and all this lot. And I put that in a congratulations card to her from the entire office, and I got amazing response, and people kept telling me, emailing me and texting me saying, bloody hell, these are marvelous, do more. So I thought, oh, I've got a little talent, and that's why I started. And I then took them to a folk club, and within 8 weeks of standing on the folk club stage, I was in a tent at the Freedom Festival performing to 200 people, and it was a really crazy thing. In the time that you and I have known each other, I have been very consciously trying to read things from the book, and occasionally, and certainly at A Way with Words in Hull, there are a couple of poets who, and I don't mean virtually, I mean in the old days when we actually went into a pub and things like that, you're meant to do 4 minutes, and their introduction could be 4 minutes, and then they do very long pieces, and that used to annoy me that they didn't discipline themselves. So I do try to make sure when some of these Zooms that I've been on are 3 minutes, so I think it's my way of doing the shorter poems to make sure that I fit in, because I've got almost like a phobia about going over. I feel I'm very selfish and that somebody might not get a go, particularly if it's one of these where you're going to go around twice, then the last few are in danger of not actually getting on. So I try to be very disciplined online, and most of the ones I'm on are 3, 4, 5 minutes. So I try to make sure I fit in with that, really. I do have longer ones. And when I started out, most of my poems were probably longer than they are now. I have found sometimes that I probably went on too long. And so now I've got more used to editing down. And there's a poem in the book called 5 Strong Women, which I do for International Women's Day and all sorts of things like that. And it started off at about 5 pages long. And I realized I was bored with it. And I edited it. And it came down to an A4, and I can do that one for you later if you want. But it's one of my favourite ones. And it's actually Mike is here, and it's one of the ladies referred to it as his mum. And Mike and I have been friends since we were 11. So there you go.
There's a bunch of questions. I'm going to just do two more, and then I think Phil will either introduce Jimmy or I don't know what happens next. But anyway, here's a question from Daniel K. Did you always want to bring out a book?
Well, definitely for the last 5 years, Rose.
Yeah, I know, right? Definitely, man.
The whole thing happened initially accidentally, and I went from the folk club to an open mic to a club to the Freedom Festival, and that was about 8 weeks. And I vaguely at the beginning thought I would run out of subject matter. I thought once I've written 40 poems, that's what else will I find to write about? And then things happen in life. Or an old friend like Mike will come and we'll be talking about something. And I'll say, do you remember that time? And why isn't that a poem? And that becomes one of the comedy ones, and they can come from memory. Or if I get really angry, like various things about refugees and things like that. So I've found that although I don't write every day, some days I write several, and quite often they're gestating in my head. So I might have a week without writing anything, but then I've got 3 or 4 to write down. And as the body of work grew, and as I was continuously asked to perform, because I got involved with a drug rehab place in Hull. Phil got me involved with all sorts of things in Leeds, including a drug rehab place. And as he said, we just clicked instantly. It was strange. You meet some people, and you even do it over the internet. You know, you find people that you harmonise with, and you can't sort of explain it. We met at a charity gig in Leeds and chatted, and he was brilliant. Oh, I'm glad I'm not following him. And yes, I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay. We have to move on anyway, I think.
How amazing I was. Don't stop him, Rose. You were talking about how amazing I was, Richard. Carry on.
So gradually it became that I did want to write a book. I did want a book published, but I would have thought it was probably 6 years ago that that occurred to me. But and to be fair, Rose was an inspiration, because I did a poem called "A Tale of Warning for Men," which is again one of my best, and it's because I had a breast cancer scare, and I performed at the York Literature Festival, and Rose was coordinating it. And at the end of the event, and it was quite long, and there were lots of poets, I think about 20 or something like that, and some very good ones. Rose stood on the stage and said, "Thank you all, it was marvellous. I won't do American accents, can't do that." And she said, "And wasn't Richard's poem about breast cancer wonderful?" And I thought she was going to say, "And Mary's about so-and-so, and Graham's about so-and-so, and John." And she just mentioned me, you know. Wow. So it's your fault, you know, that you've got landed with me.
It was a very good poem. So there's 3 questions now, and I'm just going to do these 3. You can put more into the chat, but or maybe I'll just, I don't know, it's up to you, Phil, really. But what was the first poem you ever performed? This is from Sharon Garner.
It was one that I ever performed. It was a poem, I believe, called "Cats," and it basically we had a terraced house on a main road in Leeds, and there was a long front garden and a tiny little back passage. And I used to sit there with a bottle of wine on my deck chair reading a book, and people would say, "Well, there's buses passing and people can see you." I said, "Well, I'm going to be fully clothed. I'm not going to be doing anything they can't watch." And my neighbour had 2 Persian cats, and they're cats like me. And they came and sat on me. And then there was another one called Scruffy Murphy, and he sat on me. And then 2 little kittens came. So I had 5 cats. And people started sort of thinking of me as the crazy cat man. And I didn't own a cat. And they kept saying, "Why have you got 5 cats?" And I kept saying, "Well, I haven't got a cat, but we seen you were on a bus. We saw you. There were 5 cats and 2 bloody great big ones." I said, "And was one dragging a dead wood pigeon?" And it could have been, you know. And so I turned that into an amusing poem. And that, I think, was the very first poem I did. And I occasionally perform it, and I'm pleased with it. And I think I hit the ground running, because sometimes people go back to the very early work and don't like it. But I quite like cats still, you know.
That is a very funny story.
Yeah, well, it is, particularly when Scruffy gives me the damn dead wood. I always liked it better when they were dead than when they were half dead, you know. Oh dear. Anyway, yes.
And can I just say, before Richard introduces Jimmy, if there is any more questions, if you just type them into the chat. I've just had a private message with a request for one of the poems from the book. But because we want you to buy the book, you're not getting any more from the book. So you need to buy it. But what we are going to do is, if you already own the book, or if you buy the book and you're in this chat here now, if there's a particular one that you like or that means something to you, Richard will send you a video message of him reading it. So Claire, Richard will do that for you. And if anyone has got, like I say, a favourite, Richard will record himself reading it and send it to your inbox. But that's just for the people that are in the Zoom call now. So yeah, I'll pass you back to Richard to introduce Jimmy.
So did I answer all the bits of the questions?
There's 2 more for after.
There's 4 actually at this point, but we'll do those 4 right after Jimmy.
Okay, so now I am absolutely thrilled to introduce as my guest support. I can't believe he's supporting me. Brilliant. He's marvellous. I'm deputy chair of Withstock, and I booked Jimmy for that. He's brilliant and he's absolutely wonderful. You're going to love him. And here's Jimmy Andrex.
Hello there. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
I can hear me, but good. That's always good. Okay, this first poem has already failed. Even though its video got shared 500 times. Even though all my Facebook friends sent emoticons and hugs. Even though it got me a support slot with someone famous who's not written much lately. Even though it won second prize in a big slam. Even though I got to do it on Radio Leeds. Even though it's been published by Stairwell Books. Even though my world-famous creative writing professor called it tender but shrewd. Even though one of the celebrities it mentions helpfully died the week after I wrote it. Even though its innovative use of metaphor broke new ground. Even though people like me are the new voices the BBC are looking for this year. Even though I got so much in touch with my feminine side, I developed a yeast infection. Even though Boris Johnson once tweeted it was woke, libtard, mugwaffle. And even though I turned out to be victim of something disgusting Boris Johnson did at Oxford. And even though he then desperately backtracked and claimed to be a fan, but confused me with someone dead. And even though my mate, who writes reviews for Saboteur, got retweets from Holly McNish and Gary Lineker. And even though this was a defining moment when my Facebook post stopped talking about writing and started slagging off old writers, it still already failed. Because surely that bloke with the learning difficulties, in the toilets, in the shopping centre, in the city of culture, still gets kicked out in the street when he soils himself, alone. Right, next one. I'm from Wakefield, and Wakefield has many faults and a batty MP who wants to build a monorail around the city centre. But we don't need one because we've already got a free city bus where you often hear conversations like this. I know. So there I am, stripped off on the couch, knees up near me chin. I know. And he says, you appear to have a small hemorrhoid. I know. Small? Don't feel small when I'm sat there gritting my teeth. I know. So he says, I suggest something topical. And I'm thinking, what? Like Brexit? I know. It is. It's just the sort of thing my mother would say. I mean, there's no recovering from Alzheimer's, is there? Unless you're Rupert Murdoch. I know. Well, you have to laugh, don't you? They always say laughter's the best. I know, unless you've got chlamydia. I know. Well, my mum's always been a bit that way out. I remember when Linda McCartney died and all she said was, veggie cooking didn't do her any good. I know. And God only knows where she puts her rubbish because there's never any in bin. She says if she puts it out, the bin men won't take it. I know. Well, I've tried explaining, but when they get like that, I know. You know, it's amazing what you can get down the sink with a kettle, determination and unlimited time on your hands. Just look at that Dennis Nielsen. I know. If next door's conservatory floor comes up, I won't be a bit surprised. I know. Well, I can stand about 10 minutes and then there's this film in my head of me hitting her over the head with a mallet and I feel guilty and I have to go home. I know. I won't mind, but we haven't even got a mallet. I know. She hated camping ever since that holiday in Morecambe on her birthday when she blew out all the candles and her teeth fell out. I know. Incredible, isn't it? I mean, a musical about Michael Barrymore. The song for the pool scene will be interesting. I know. Anyway, take care. Bye. Okay, the following poem, it's about rugby league and it mentions Gary Cooper, but not the star of High Noon and Sergeant York, but this Gary Cooper was an attack-minded but error-prone Wakefield Trinity fullback of the 1960s. I was born at home on a match day in April 1963. Parenting were different in those days, so Dad didn't stay with me. Instead, he went to an away game at York, a postponed cup tie. They drew 9-9 and went all the way. Our family's Wakefield till I die. My first game were in '68 in a good old-fashioned pea super. Stood next to Dougie from Agbrig, who hated Gary Cooper. My dad was at the water splash final, and to his dying breath, he always refused to blame Don Fox. He always blamed the ref. We haven't the sense we were born with. We'll even cheer the pies, so long as we can moan about it afterwards. We're Wakefield till we die. We love doom and gloom and tension. It reminds us we're alive. And it fuels our celebration, 'cause we're Wakefield till we die. We've gone bust or been threatened with mergers, but our club has always survived. They hardly ever mention us on Look North, but we're Wakefield till we die. My dad died just before Good Friday in 2016 and missed Tom Johnson's full lengther, the greatest try I've ever seen. In fact, it's a good job he missed it, for though it might have thrilled him, at the same time I were quite relieved. The excitement would definitely have killed him. I saw us get thrashed once by Keithley, and every beating still hurts. I once saw us get beat at Rochdale when the kit man forgot all the shirts. But we fought off Murdoch's mergers, and no matter how they try, they'll never ever kill us off, 'cause we're Wakefield till we die. We grieve that Covid keeps us off the terraces, but as dreadnoughts, we're hopeful, not bitter. We'll worship the Trinity from a distance, screaming and cursing at Twitter. And we'll boo every dodgy decision and cheer every fluky try. And if all else fails, we'll hate rhinos, 'cause we're Wakefield till we die. Okie doke, final poem. I dedicate this one to me granny, who always said that what you can't see can't hurt you, but she did die of radiation poisoning. But I also dedicate it to me dad, who was a builder with the heart of a lion and a lifetime ban from Chester Zoo. He used to ask me what all this poetry were about, and he'd say, "Why'd you bother?" And I'd say, well, it's to loosen the noose of the lie of austerity, or to tackle the riddle of our own creativity, to get mortal hissing out of our head onto a page or onto some stage. It's a clumsy homemade arrowhead for poking other people's abilities. It's a weapon made with sense and rhythms, words and images in busy patterns, making new meaning like noisy trees in empty forest, and once unleashed, out and about and out of control, it's no longer mine, but a Frankenstein thought, limping off its slab, lunging at injustice, washed down with beer, wine, or even cups of tea. We want this poetry, we want this poetry, we want this poetry badly. Now, this poetry might keep you awake at 4 a.m. This poetry might lead to mistakes, which then, in turn, lead to people you'd never have met. So no safe bets. And sometimes safety ceases to matter when your head's already misfiring in tatters, stressed, distressed, self-confessed, misfits mistaken for mischief makers, not chemical miracles in the image of creator. We need this poetry, we need this poetry, we need this poetry badly. Like a man needs a plan, like a band needs a van, like a light needs a night, like your dog needs a walk, like a nation needs compassion, like I need some retro fashion, like Man United need a few more tankings, like Boris Johnson needs a spanking. We need this poetry, we need this poetry, we need this poetry to go deeper, deeper than an ocean trench, in search of life as we don't know it yet. Or just fun and shallow as an unplanned paddle. This is the job of the poet. Now, this poetry might lift you, this poetry might gift you opportunities as yet unseen or unknown. This poetry might make even you so bold as to have a go yourself. Yes, you. We want your poetry, we want your poetry, we want your poetry badly. We need this poetry, we need this poetry, we need this poetry badly. Please buy Richard's poetry, buy Richard's poetry, buy Richard's poetry madly right now. I've been Jimmy Andrex. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you very much indeed.
I just had to.
I'm sure you'll all agree I made a very good choice with my support act, and he was the first person I thought of when Rose suggested that we get one, and so there you go. A brilliant guy, and we have eaten chips and fish and things like that at Withensea, have we not?
And very nicely were, Richard, as well.
They were indeed. That was the first thing I asked, where's best fish shop? Now, I got involved with two poets called Becky Cherryman and Steve Toast, who were writing a play and putting together a project, and they wanted historic stories about homelessness and bedsitter poverty in Harrogate. And that's where I came from, and they're in this book, so I'm not going to perform them. Now, recently, I wanted to, I was on a Zoom, possibly with you, Ross and Mark, or Ray, or Clint for that matter, but somebody used the voice of a song and they told the story of the person that was singing the lyrics. And I thought, well, that's a fascinating idea. And oddly enough, Petula Clark occurred to me, which I know is unusual. And so I thought about Downtown, not Petula, not Tony Hatch who wrote the lyric, but about the person. And I tried to write it and it just was awful. It was crap. And I just couldn't do it. And then it occurred to me that to use my time in Harrogate, when I had a very strange year, having to mop floors and clean kitchens and things like that to survive. My father and stepmother were abroad and I wasn't invited, and I had no money and no training, because they don't teach you at school things like, I mean, I have no idea if there was housing benefit back then. I didn't know about it. I didn't apply for it. I just scrubbed floors and did things like that. And so I wrote this poem, and it became part 3 of the 2 that was Saboteur nominated. Didn't win, but Saboteur nominated, and I'm very pleased about that. This is called Inspired by Downtown, and it's a very recent one. In fact, was written too late to be in the book. Loneliness was mine, had left home while being thrown out. Plenty of worries, college in the day, work at night to pay the bills. No help or support from anywhere, so just an empty bedsit to return to. No phone, so isolated. A record player on the floor, no plug, just bare wires into the socket. A fawn and red Dancet. Albums, Melanie, Joni, Aretha, Motown, and especially Petula. And I was so alone, I played them all and realised that to forget all my troubles and cares, I should go to the town and meet folk there. I knew a place in Harrogate, on Montpellier it was, a cellar bar, can't remember the name, plenty of music, no bossa nova, but did hear the traffic on the way. Lights outside in the trees, not neon, but bright enough for me. There was music and beer, friendly faces and folk to talk to. I did not need to be alone. I was indeed downtown, had taken Petula's advice, had found a place to go. It was indeed a friendly and safe home.
Right to you.
And I've been, thank you. I've been requested by Lee, whose son Robbie particularly likes this poem, to write this. Now, it was a very important poem to me. I play silly games, or did. My granddaughters are now 11 and 12. And 10 and 12. I'll have to get it right because somebody will be
10 and 11.
Oh no, she's going to be 12. Right, that's a grandfather for you, isn't it? Typical. And I love them to bits. And we, for years and years and years, until my hip really went. I had a new hip not long ago, 2 years ago, and we played this pirate game. And we would get on the sofa and we would rescue every toy in the house, every cushion, everything, you know. And this was the very first one, and it was fairly early on, and it was the first time I brought the house down, that people stomped and cheered. I mean, I had really good reaction, but this was amazing. And then I got invited to Withensy's Pirate Festival, and that was another story. Anyway, so this is Pirate Izzy. We were playing on the old brown settee, Izzy, her sister Lara, and me. Suddenly the magic stirred and we were all at sea. Everything went blurred as the wind blew at me. There was water all around, and we listened to the sound of the waves hitting our ship, which through the ocean did zip. Avast, shouted Izzy, did she. A pirate I will be. Teddy was with us too, and even though the wind blew, he climbed the mast to be lookout, and with a great fright and shout plummeted into the briny that was so dangerous and shiny. Izzy threw off her coat, used it as a net to float, did rescue that scared bear. Boy, was he glad she was there. Once he was dried, He did smile and did rest in the sun a while. We're now far away and afloat, with Pirate Izzy, Sister Lara, and me. She soon looked around and did gloat. It is land that I can see. We made for that nearby shore where nature did treasures store. There were oysters full of pearls, fit to festoon queens or earls. Pineapples grew on the tree for Pirate Izzy, Sister Lara, and me. We ate a great big fruity feast and did pick coconuts and sail for the east. Then the sound of the wind and the sea did fade away for Pirate Izzy, Lara, and me. We looked around, saw dried ground, the magic had gone away, and we were back home in the lounge that day. Hooray, what great and lovely fun we had for Izzy, Lara, and me. That can never be bad. And it led on to, I think there are 6 Pirate Izzy, and there's one Captain Lara one, and they were all games that we did play. And it came to a time when I wanted to write about Easter. I write about the occasions, Christmas and what have you, and I really didn't want to get into writing anything religious, because my views are Jesus was a friendly cove, and so was Buddha and Muhammad and all these other people. They were inclusive and they wanted peace and love, and they didn't judge people. And rather than glorify cathedrals and things, Jesus was throwing the traders out of the temple, wasn't he? So when the girls arrived with their bunny rabbits and threw them in the sea, we rescued them. And the odd thing was, there's a really lovely literature festival, Derwent Valley, which is up near Newcastle, and I got booked for that, and I've done it twice. And I did say to Richard, who might be here, but I can't see him, that I wanted to know how they'd heard about me from Leeds. And they said, oh, we saw this wonderful video and we really loved it. And I thought, oh, is it Benefit Scrounger? Is it male breast cancer? No, it was Captain Lara and Pirate Izzy Save the Easter Bunny. And so it just goes to show, you don't know where you get these gigs from, but they were so impressed with that one that, yeah, so there you go. Then I just wanted to do one that has a connection, but I won't tell you what it is yet, to Rose. And it's called Trouble in Store. So we went away for a stay, a city break, not a holiday, in one of those reasonable apart hotels. Went through the lobby, all seaside things and shells. Eileen wanted a rest, I went on a shopping quest. Into one of those gadget stores nearby and browse. The time did fly. Lots of shop assistants stood by. I did wonder why there were so many there, following me and watching where I went. Oh my God, they think I'm bent and going to steal. I did quite awful feel. I stopped by a large white luminous statue, gave me a fright. 'Twas of Martin Clune, some 8 feet high. Ridiculously large ears, oh my, £200. Seemed a lot for this, seemed so daft. It was not exactly a delicate work of craft. I heard the assistant snickering away, and then heard one of them say, what do you think he's doing? Well, I was only viewing. Surely they did not think I was going to have it away and steal a large statue that day. I protested at them being so rude, but I did feel bad, and about it did brood. They denied they'd been talking about me, but I was the only man in the shop, otherwise man free. They seemed insolent and grim, so I went out on a limb, and I asked for the manager to complain. It really was a pain, because the gobbiest of them was she, and did get very rude to me. I asked for an address so that I could write. I would give them a fright. As I left the shop, they did jeer. I would never go back there. When I got home, I had a fright. A letter of apology. So why not a delight? Well, of course, it came with a goodwill gift free. I looked at it and felt miffed. It was well wrapped up. It was not a mug from which to sup. No, an 8-foot statue stood there in my front garden where, once unwrapped and bare, at Martin Clune's people did stare. Neighbours stopped to giggle and even pretended to wiggle those large ears. Oh my goodness, I needed several beers. I staggered off inside. This was a blow to my pride. Then I woke with a start and a scream. but was very glad it was all a dream.
Yeah,
And the connection to Rose, which has puzzled her, is that I'd gone to Rose's event at York, and we'd stayed in this apart hotel with all the shelves in the lobby. And it was the next night I had this bizarre dream. So it's only a tenuous link. And I thought, well, that's such a strange dream. I went to the loo, but then shot downstairs like Roadrunner to type it up, because otherwise, if I'd left it 2 hours, I would have thought, I had an odd dream about a shop. It might have had Martin Clunes in it, So I had to get it down.
You've got about 5 questions to answer, sir.
We have to do quick fire questions, quick fire answers.
Yeah, I think definitely quick fire questions and then quick fire answers. I'm going to do them out of order if I've received them from. This is from Michelle. And I think Danny's going to leave soon, but there's no Danny K question to come. Michelle asks, how did you come to choose the title of your book?
Could it be because her husband Mark gave me the most ecstatic response to this poem? He sent me about 3 pages of A4 raving about it, saying how it should be on every site and every person on the planet should know about this poem. It was so brilliant and significant. Wow, 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 and wow. It could be that.
Okay, that could be. All right. Now, this is going to sound like a long question, but try to focus. Do you find editing hard, and any tips? This is from Ross.
It depends on what the poem is. If it's something like one of the comedies, the structure is there, so I just need to tidy it up. Some poems, you have to stand back and look at it and say, do I need to say that? Is that bit interesting? Can I make it shorter? And as I said about 5 Strong Women, I think I cut 75% out of it. And I was at a workshop with Rupert Creed and a lady called Angela Needham, who is no longer with us. And we were put into exercise pairs, and she was very brutal with me. And I'm eternally grateful to her, because in those 3 hours, I learned so much about editing and about being objective and saying, that can go.
That's where that saying is, kill your darlings. You have to, no matter how much you love a phrase, if you really love a phrase, save it and put it somewhere else. But yes, make sure that everything you write.
Once you've said what you want to say,
yes,
stop.
Exactly. So, and speaking of, this is from Kim Gray. Is poetry predominantly a performing art for you, or rather than the written word? I think I've read this right. Is poetry predominantly performing art for you rather than the written word, says Kim?
No, I think I love both. But I think the thing that's important to me is writing it.
I like that. That's very good. All right. Again, one from Ross. An unusual question. Which of your poems is your favorite and why?
I think it's probably one that I don't perform very much, called Unrequited Love. And it's a sort of story of, well, it's a story of a limpet on a rock in Withensea Bay that falls in love with a sea trout, and it's unattainable. And I just like it. But one of the reasons why I don't perform it is because I've got this terrible fear in the back of my mind that when I was 5, I must have read an Enid Blyton book that had that story in it. But it's probably not true anyway.
We all steal from each other. It's all right. But let me see. I like this one. Here we go. Dave Attrill writes, does your hometown of Withersnea heavily inspire any of your poems? There you go.
Yes, I write about Withensea and I write about Hull a lot. If I was to get more than 2 books ever, I could do a Hull and Withensea volume of poems. That's me being tactful. That's me being subtle. Yes, that's an idea I've thought of, because I have so many about Withensea and about the history of Withensea, about things that happen now, and things that happen to me quite often happen in Withensea or Hull. So yes.
Well, that's interesting, because Maggie Hall asks you that very question. The next question I have is from Maggie M. Hall. What will be the focus of your next book? And I think that was probably if you did have one.
I have 2 or 3 ideas.
Oh.
Good, she says. That I would have another. You see, I had a pool of poems that I regarded as really important to me, but I couldn't put them all in. So the ones that didn't make it, but some of them are still prize winning, would make volume 2, but then maybe volume 3 would be the whole one.
Well, that does happen. I mean, you do have to make sure that the book just, it's focused and it has I don't want to say a theme, but you'll know when a book is done, and that's so there you go. But Maggie has a follow-up question. Well, not follow-up, but another one from Maggie. What is your favorite topic when it comes to writing? Probably rhymes with Metula.
I've only written one poem about her. To be honest, only Petula Clark's fan club would like to read it because it references all sorts of things that would not mean anything. She does come into them because she's been in my life like a sort of glorious ribbon. I like writing about things that move me, and I probably enjoy writing protesting poems, which I can get very rude in, so they're not in the book, because I am aware that it will have a wide audience. And I also like writing serious ones, like the breast cancer one and benefits grounded, which you've heard me perform, and that's they really are important to me, and I think that we have to use our voice to be heard. It's all very well writing about lobsters and mermaids under the pier, and that they're lovely, and I like them in doing them, and I do lots of children's events, but the ones I like writing are about the atrocious state of the country and the government, and things like benefit scrounger and things that you can actually make an impact and help with.
Exactly. All right. Now we have 4 or 5 more questions. Adam Endicott, have you considered writing a song for Petula to perform?
Well, oddly enough, no, because Petula now is more or less just recording her own stuff. When she's done 4 albums in the last 10 years, but it's full of her own writing. She's unlikely. I have sent her songs written by my friends that I thought were particularly good, and her manager just says, "Richard, that's not where she is." However, 4 local singer-songwriters have written songs, and Sharon Garner, who might be here, but she's coming in and out, had the idea to do, in aid of the New Within Sapir, an EP. And then I asked 1 or 2 other people if they would do songs. And we've now got 14 songs from my lyrics written by 14 different singer-songwriters. And it's coming out on a CD soon. And it's been completely amazing which ones they chose. It's been a surprise, and it's been an absolute delight for me. Not as good as getting a book out, but pretty damn good.
Richard, can you tell people the response to when you recorded you singing one of those tracks and sent it off? What the response to that
Yes,
was?
well, Sharon is an absolute sweetie. She's a lovely lady. And I work with her a lot, and she's a star of Withstock, and she does a lot of fundraising for the Pier and things like that. And I said that I had got some song lyrics which I had written a long time ago before I did poetry. I'd forgotten about them. So she said, "Well, why don't you do a couple of a cappella versions and send them to me, and I could maybe put some guitar music behind them?" And I said, "Super, you'll laugh." She said, "I won't laugh. They'll be fine." So I recorded them and sent them to her. And the next day she messaged me and said, "I think if you did them as spoken word, it might be rather good."
Oh, Sharon, who is here. Very diplomatic, darling. That was wonderful. Let me see. There's 4 questions, but here we go. Paul Thornton, with your poetry contacts, would these help Withersnee host a poetry festival? I think in a way there is one, though, but that's from Paul.
So can you say that again? Sorry.
With your poetry contacts, or will your poetry contacts help Withersnee? I'm probably saying the name wrong. Would it help you guys host a poetry festival?
Well, we have the acoustic tent at Withstock, and it's mainly music, but I do have 2 or 3 poets each day. And Phil just brings the house down, as does Jimmy, but Phil has this charisma that he doesn't like us talking about. And Phil has had a lot of bad experience in his life, and he can talk about it, and he reduces people to tears. The odd thing was, at the last full Withstock, we had a Petula challenge. Everyone had to cover a Petula song, and I asked the poets and to include Petula somehow in their talk. And a couple of them attempted things like Sailor and My Friend the Sea, because it was so appropriate being within sight of the beach. And Phil was talking about knife crime and choices and decisions in life. And he said, anyway, I got really tired, so I sat down and I got out my Petulia Clerk
I didn't even know her name.
brought the tent down, that I bamboozled and talked all these people into singing a Petula song, but even Phil was joining in, and he managed to work it into a talk about knife crime and delinquency, so there you go.
Right, now here's something I had asked you, and you weren't very clear, but anyway, Frank Johnson is asking you, does your former police career influence your writing, Richard?
My
former
police career. Oh, police career. Very rarely, to be honest. I've done a couple of humorous ones about the police. Daft things like, I met Alan Clark, who was very famous, and it's a long story. It would take too long. But then I've written a couple of emotive ones as well, because when I was 19 and very naive, I went to a road accident, and a man had been killed. He'd hit a lamppost and his brains were all over the Christmas presents for his kids on the back seat. And it was just, awful for anyone, but for a 19-year-old who'd never seen a dead body. And then I had to go to the house and tell the widow. And I knocked on the door and I said, can I come in? I have something to tell you. And I tried to handle it as well as any 19-year-old. And I told her that her husband had died in this car crash. And she said, what's the fucking bitch with her? And hope she's dead too.
Oh.
And, now it's shocking, but at 19 with no experience. So there's a poem that tells about that. The copper was 19. And so, yes, so that there's the ones I put on YouTube are nearly all, there's only about 3 on YouTube, but they're all more humorous. But and I do a lot of raconteur stories as well within my act, and sometimes I tell a story about the police force and that sort of thing. But there's one that Eileen hates, all about being in felt uniform in the summer of 1976, and the state my groin was in. But there you go.
Why on earth would anyone send a 19-year-old police person off to give someone such bad news? My Lord, I'm stunned by that. Anyway, right. Carol, I don't know how to say it, Carol Osgerby, possibly, because all the word is, the name is stuck together there, but would you like to do a book that didn't cater to the wider audience, meaning a book that is rather more specific, possibly? I guess, a book where you could swear, well, but I guess.
Well, yes, I would love to do a politically angry book.
Oh, yeah.
I would also love to do a children's book. And,
yes, someone asked about that too, actually.
And because, it's a very big part of my writing. And here is my friend Ray Douglas on the screen, and he is the most brilliant children's writer. And you really should look at his stuff because it's fantastic. And yes, I would. But, at this point, I'm then mentioning 6 books, Rose. So
we might not still be going then. We're in our 60s and 70s. Right. And then
one a year. Yeah.
Rose,
We've
there's
got-
a question for Jimmy. Am I okay to ask this one?
yeah, please.
So Jimmy, somebody's asked if you like my Leeds Rhinos shirt that I put on specially, and I just want to thank you for mentioning Wakefield Trinity because I'd almost forgotten they had a rugby team.
You're wicked.
Well, is that what it is? Is that a Leeds, what they call rhinos now? Are there? Yeah. Somebody's got to wear them, I suppose.
And Rose, let me ask a quick question about publishing. If somebody in this chat wanted to maybe speak to someone about publishing, what would they need as a minimum to come to you? So would they have to already have a full plan and then you just take that on and look at it, or can they come to you with ideas?
Well, you could come to us with ideas, but I guess basically we'd want to see if you have work, short stories or poetry that works on the page. Because this is why I put Richard off for so long. I said, Richard, I have to make sure that, we're working as hard for your book as we do for all of our other books. Let me put that another way. I work as hard for a book that sells 1 copy as I do for a book that sells 1,000. They'll take the same amount of work. It'll take the same amount of time. We'll do the same amount of editing. We'll do cost the same amount of money. So that's the kind of thing where I say it has to really work on the page. It has to stick in my mind. It has to really capture our attention. So that's what we need more than, 100 poems or 5 short stories or whatever. It has to be something that I'm like, yeah, I do want to see that in print. And then, of course, the other thing Richard did was he pre-sold about 100 books. So I felt safe to go ahead and do that because, it is a business. We're trying to just make sure that we break even. The books that don't break even, the books that lose money, are the books where the person does only 1 launch or never tells anybody about it or doesn't have the book in their pocket all the time. That's really the thing that does a book in more than anything else. It's a piece of artwork and you have to be proud of it. So you tell people about it, which is what we're doing here tonight. So that's a really important part. And Richard is, as you can hear, he's on stage all the time and he's not afraid to go and talk to people. And so that's actually a really important thing. That's really an important part. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, I do like to look at stuff. We do poetry, short stories, all that sort of stuff. And in fact, if you look on the Stairwell Books website tonight, I'll probably give you free shipping on another book if you buy it. And if you were to buy a 3rd book, I might give it to you for half price until Alan comes in the room and yells at me. But pay it forward. But yeah, so it's not how many poems you've got so much as do they work and are you willing to work? Are you willing to go out there and go to the open mics and say, this is a really good book, not just because I've written it, but it's a good book and why don't you consider getting it?
Yeah. And for those that have got Richard's book, I believe it's on sale on Amazon, which means that people can leave reviews, which obviously help with future sales. So if you do have his book, please go on and just talk about how brilliant it is. Only if you think it's brilliant, because I know that no one here is going to say anything otherwise. So I'm not telling you to do something that you already don't feel.
That's the thing that I now have trepidation about is, wow, I put it out there. I know people have bought it from Stairwell, but people are going to buy it from Amazon. And apparently it's selling in America and Australia. So people who don't know me from Adam will now be putting reviews on. So it will be interesting and new for me, and I'm looking forward to that.
I recommend buying it from Rose if she's discounting other books, but go on Amazon and leave a review because you can do that without purchasing, I believe.
Oh, right. I didn't realize that.
Oh, you can. As long as you're someone who's bought anything from Amazon in the past year or something like spend at least 10 quid or something goofy like that, then you can leave a review. You can also leave a review on Goodreads. And if you want, Richard, I'll help you put the book up on Goodreads. A book can only be put up by the author. Publishers can't, or I'd just be putting them up there all the time. So they know better. So the author themselves has to put the book up on Goodreads. But that's a lovely site. It's like Facebook, but just for book readers. It's like, it's really lovely. I've put reviews up on it myself for other books that I have read. And anyone can put a book review up, but only the author can put the book itself up on Goodreads.
I'll do that then. Yes, good. So there we are. Yes.
I think we're winding it down.
I
Yes.
just want to do one funny one, which is it's really odd. The serious ones do better on YouTube than the comedy. The comedy doesn't do well, but this is the one I am asked for every time I step on a stage. I get asked for this, and it's not in the book, but it might be in the second volume because I've put more comedy in. And one night I had a dream that I now, after a year of being locked down, couldn't perform, and I couldn't remember anything. And so I stood there in my pajamas or whatever and recited this to an empty bedroom because I thought, God, my performing art has gone. So, and this happened in Withensea, and it's called Good Intentions. I know my woman well. I'm able to buy for her just swell. I know what jewellery she likes. That's courage, you say, yikes. So yesterday I went into town and I did not buy a gown. No, I saw a blouse and a stole that matched, and it is my goal to try and please my beloved wife and be thoughtful throughout life. So I did what I knew I should have done. I looked at the sizes and I knew that they'd fit my beloved one. I went inside that charity shop and did buy both of these great tops. Now, this was a great inconvenience to me because I could not now afford to buy the vegetables for tea. In fact, I'd have to make a second trip to the shop to get a fresh veg to chop so that we could have some food that was so good. But this I was quite prepared to do, looking forward to the praise and appreciation that I was due. I got home and showed them off proudly. She to me did exclaim loudly, "Oh my, just why did you buy these tops? They're complete flops. You should not have paid cash. That was rather daft and rash." "Go on, tell me why," said I with a sigh. "Well, last Friday I donated them, not wanting to wear them again. You were with me that day when I gave them away. And last but not least of all, you have the gall to not have noticed I..." And again she did sigh. "I've been wearing them for the past 4 years. Honestly, you could drive me to tears." All I could say was, "Oops," and wow, kind of remember them now. And and it's true, it's documentary true. I don't need to make up things, do I? And I went to a very posh little place called Swanland, which is the north of Hull. And it's, it's like Beverley or Chester or somewhere like that. And everyone arrived in their Jags and their Daimlers and their Porsches. And when I got to the charity shop line, I had this huge applause and I had to stop. And it went on for about 25 seconds, which doesn't sound a long time, but it is when you stood there and you're trying to remember the rhythm of the poem and where you were. And afterwards, this very nattily dressed man who had an Armani suit and a Valentino tie came over and said, "Oh, I liked your poem about the charity shop." And I said, "Oh, good." He said, "I have a very similar story. I spent £837 on a Hermes handbag for my wife, and she didn't like it." And I said, "Yeah, that's roughly the same as me and carrots." But anyway, so that's actually become part of the poem almost, because I always tell that little story afterwards. But somebody has £837 to spend on a bloody handbag. Anyway. Yeah, so even in that poem, you end up with social comment, don't you? Just tacked on the end. And so I stood up, jumped out of bed and performed it to know, because I just thought, God, I've lost the means to the ability to perform with this year of being locked down. But there you go.
Well, thank you very much. You want to wrap this up, Phil?
Yes, well, thank you for Phil. Oh,
no,
sorry.
No, you go ahead. You say thanks to everyone. If
I missed the odd word with the hearing aid, you see, but there you go.
Take it away, Richard.
It's been a joy, and thank you very much, Phil, and to Rose and to Alan and to every one of you who has come. I feel most loved and most supported, and it's been absolutely brilliant. friends from long ago, family, new friends, people from the poetry community, and it's just been wonderful. So thank you very much.
No, Richard.
All right, you can all unmute yourselves and give them a good applause, I think.
Yeah. All right, Richard.
So good.
Really good. And Jimmy, fabulous as ever.
And congratulations on the
Richard.
launch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just reading all these lovely comments coming up, and it's really touching, and it's really been worth doing, and it's
Thank you,
lovely.
Richard.
Well, Richard, I'm going to save you the chat, darling. I'm going to save you the chat. If you can't get all of it, I can just save you all of the chat and I'll send it on to you.
Please, that would be lovely.
Yes, I'll do that.
So, I think it's about time to say goodnight then, isn't it? Is anyone-
Thank you, everyone, very much for coming. Alan has put the link in, and if you want to get the book, you probably already have it, but if you want to, please get a copy of the book. It's free shipping for the next 24 hours, and probably going to forget to put shipping on to anything else you want to buy, and if you get a third book, it will be half price.
And don't
we have
forget,
a lot of
Easter,
stuff.
Easter is coming, as is next Christmas. So
There you
stock
go.
up in advance. And there's a brilliant book of poems about refugees, isn't there, Rose, which is called...
Oh, sweetie, you're in it. It's called Belong. That is fantastic. Now, that book, I volunteered all of my time. We volunteered all the formatting. We did that all completely for free. And every single penny of the book, that all the sales from Belong go to the York Refugee Action Group, RAY. Refugee Action York. And some of the poems in there are amazing. They are fantastic stuff. It is fantastic. It is one of the best books I've ever seen. The cover is gorgeous. I think that even if you buy another book half price, all the money from that sale will go to Ray, because that's just a thing I've done for an absolute, it was a labor of love. We get no money for that at all, not a penny, nothing. That goes right to Ray. And it's a very important book. It is lovely. And there's poetry in it from refugees who were in Germany at the time. And it's got their poetry in English as well as German, because they're from Syria, but they've written it in German, which I think is adorable. I think it's really adorable. And they've learned another language. They're learning languages left and right. So they're going to be good citizens wherever they go. And so it's just a fantastic book. Yeah, that's right. You are in that, Richard. And it is a heck of a good
Indeed.
book.
And there are poems that I will never submit to anywhere else. So
Yeah.
they will only be in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, there is some good stuff in that book. There's a lot of good poetry in that book. In fact, what is his name? Fellow who used to do
There's some
something.
by Rose.
Yeah, but what is the fellow? Anthony Dunn. Anthony Dunn is in it. He donated 2 poems to that book also. Yes. Yes, that's it. That's it for me. No more sales. But thank you very much, everyone.
Recommend that one.
Yeah, that is a heck of a good book.
Good night,